It's March 2024, and we're still making videos about Jake Guentzel and the Pittsburgh Penguins. However, this video is coming after the trade deadline, after Guentzel was traded from the Pens over to the Carolina Hurricanes, and after we had a bunch of comments in the media by both parties. Jake Guentzel spoke out about the Pittsburgh Penguins and his career over there, and Kyle Dubas responded to these comments. It's been a pretty interesting back and forth, and one that's been a developing story over the past few days. So what I wanted to do in this video was just kind of give the tale of the tape, talk about some articles that have the quotes, and give some thoughts. So, Jake Guentzel, as we all know, 29 years old, he is now in the Carolina system as an expiring UFA contract. He's making $4.5 million a year against the Carolina Hurricanes cap, and he's signed on till the end of this season. Guentzel has 14 points in 10 games with the Canes, a pretty slight increase points per game-wise in comparison to his 52 points in 50 games with the Penguins this year. He's been a very good player throughout his entire career, and realistically, him bolstering up his point production isn't a surprise. He's a good enough player to get that done. He's getting a lot more assists now in Carolina compared to when he was in Pittsburgh, which is nice to see. But Jake Guentzel was traded over from Pittsburgh to Carolina in a package that a lot of people said was maybe a bit subpar in terms of what the Penguins got on their team in the moment, but when it comes to the future assets, I mean, hey, they got a lot of those, so they should be pretty happy. Michael Bunting, 3 prospects, 2 draft picks, it's a lot. And I get it, Guentzel was not the only asset the Hurricanes acquired, they also got Ty Smith. But at the end of the day, this is the trade that went down, and when it comes to how the Penguins have responded, we already made a few videos talking about how Sidney Crosby was reportedly ticked off with the way the Penguins have navigated the trade deadline period, how he himself was kind of upset to see his buddy leave, and how there may be some sort of future contention as to whether or not Pittsburgh is going to be able to keep Crosby. We'll probably see him re-sign at some point next year, but for now, there has been a little bit of a discussion there. But when it comes to Jake Guentzel himself, we're going to go over to an article on Pittsburgh Hockey Now published by the Sports Now Media Group from 2 days ago. Penguins' Kyle Dubas answers Jake Guentzel why the Pens don't rebuild and why they need changes. The article opens up by talking about how Jake Guentzel and the Carolina Hurricanes lost to the Penguins 4-1 on Tuesday night at PPG Paints Arena. After the game, Jake Guentzel fired a small salvo towards Dubas. "My intention was to stay, but they just thought there was a better direction to go a different way. It was out of my hands, so it was not my choice." And the way this comment reads, it puts the blame, is that the right word to use? I don't know. It puts the initiative, I guess you could say is a better word. It puts the initiative on a Jake Guentzel trade on Pittsburgh. Guentzel is absolving himself from any sort of liability in this situation, saying, hey, I wanted to stay. That was my plan. I didn't want to leave. Like, my intention was to stick around there, re-sign and stay with Crosby, stay with my buds and Malkin and Letang, and we'd have a good time. But they wanted a different direction, so that's their prerogative. Maybe that comes from a place of being butthurt. Maybe that comes from genuine affection for the area, and I think it's probably a little bit of both, if not mostly affection for the area. But in responding to this, Kyle Dubas made a local radio show appearance on Mark Madden's show, 105.9 The X, where he went out there and said this: Jake Guentzel is entitled to his opinion, especially in this market, to give his opinion. What I would say is that going into this year, I hoped that everything would go to the most optimistic viewpoint. We would be a contending team, and that would dictate decision-making differently than it did. I'm sorry that it ended up being Jake as the one whose contract was up at that time. That's how he feels about it. Especially right after a game, competitors like Jake are emotional. He's entitled to how he feels, and I don't take umbrage at all. Madden also then pressed Dubas on Sidney Crosby's future, but Dubas largely sidestepped the issue, while saying he believes Crosby will accelerate the retooling with his presence and leadership. The group, including Crosby and his agent Pat Brisson, won't sit down to discuss a new contract which would begin on July 1st, 2025, until after this season. Dubas said it's unanimous that the organization wants Crosby to remain with the Penguins, which is not surprising, and I think everybody can kind of understand that. Now here's the thing with Guentzel. He spoke more so from the perspective of him trying to put the blame elsewhere. Kyle Dubas is pretty much refuting that, saying, no, sorry, like, it's mostly due to circumstance that we had to trade Guentzel away. Oh, if we were a good team, if we were a contending team, we may not have had to do it. And I'm sorry, Jake, that your contract was the one that was expiring at this time. Pretty much saying that a lot of this has to do with circumstance rather than a personal or immediate decision to say, oh yeah, sorry, Guentzel's done. Like, we don't want this guy anymore. And really, Kyle Dubas, he's always been a pretty smart guy. I think he's navigating this conversation about Jake Guentzel in a pretty smart way, very much taking the blame out of his hands as well. It's not Dubas strictly saying that they didn't want him back, it's just, hey, circumstances, you're the guy who expired now. And I like how he said as well that, yeah, Jake is a hockey player. He's an emotional guy. Most hockey players are. So the fact that he ended up losing, he probably doesn't feel too good about that. He gets traded from his team. We really like him over here, but he gets sent away. All his teammates, his friends, goodbye. And then they beat him later. That's not going to feel good. So seeing him respond in the way that he did into the media's public eye, yeah, that's not too surprising, but it is an incongruous comment to make, so I gotta go out there, calm the waters a little bit. At the end of the day, though, with the Pittsburgh Penguins, Kyle Dubas pretty much is doing what he needs to do. I'd say that there maybe is a little bit of concern as to some of these other older guys and how their careers are going to go. Not because we don't think that they can't be effective NHL players anymore. It's just, a lot of these guys are older now. They want to win still. They're not going to be in the NHL for handouts and pocket change. They still want to be competitive, and unfortunately, with the Pittsburgh Penguins, you could say that the next era's worth of Pens hockey may not be all too competitive with respect to their younger guys and players they're developing and, the assets they got in that Jake Guentzel trade. They've got a lot of good players and pieces, but was Jake Guentzel just the first domino to fall here? Is Sidney Crosby potentially going to be next? It's good that Dubas and everybody else in the Penguins organization wants to keep Crosby around, but it's not surprising because Sidney Crosby is Sidney Crosby. At the end of the day, though, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below about the, do I say media wars? Not really media wars. Kyle Dubas and Jake Guentzel sort of tossing things out there into the media and responding to each other in that way. What are your thoughts on the way Jake Guentzel initially reacted to the Penguins beating the Hurricanes 4-1, saying that he wanted to stay in Pittsburgh? Honestly, when you lay it out like that, he loses to his old team and then he says in the media, yeah, I actually wanted to stay. I didn't want to leave. I'm the martyr here. They sent me away. They didn't want to keep me around. That kind of feels like a bit of a victim mentality. I'm not too sure. Is that the right phrasing to use there? You can let me know your thoughts in the comment section as to that assessment, but also let me know your thoughts as to how Kyle Dubas responded, calming the waters, pretty much laying it out on the line, saying, yeah, I'm sorry Jake Guentzel feels that way, but I can't control when the contracts expire, and our team wasn't as good as we thought they would be, therefore we had to make some different decisions than we were initially anticipating. So, very business casual-like response from Kyle Dubas, but let me know your thoughts in the comment section either way. Article will be linked in the description as well if you want to read more about it. There's some extra stuff that is published in this piece about the Penguins and their future, but I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.